Hi everyone. Well, today I'll be talking a bit about my memories of all the Olympic game coverages that I've done over the years. Five for right holding broadcasters, as far as five editions of the Olympics are concerned since Sydney 2000. But I started tracking the Olympics back in 1996 when I used to do a series of radio shows for a private radio station. Those are interesting times because there was just one frequency in Delhi for FM, and there were three different companies or radio stations broadcasting on the basis of time slots that were given to them. And one of them, of course, was a private company for whom I used to do radio shows then. And one of them was a show on sports. So that's when I first tracked what happened at the Olympics in 1996. So I'm going to try and remember memories for each and every one of those editions of the Olympic Games that I've tracked and then covered or anchored the broadcast of or done commentary for across networks. So 1996, that was the Atlanta Olympics, and I'll talk about international events that I will remember, and I still do remember. I will not talk about the Indian achievements because that is something I'm already talking about in a show of mine that's going out and you can watch. But on this little broadcast, I'm just going to talk about the international achievements that I remember. So 1996, I'd remember the Atlanta Olympics for two or three key moments. One, of course, was the last hurrah of Carl Lewis, the track and field legend from the United States of America. That was his last Olympics that he competed in. Of course, went out in style with his ninth Olympic gold, did Carl Lewis, and I think that was in the long jump. But also I'll remember it for the Pocket Hercules, as he was called, this weightlifter from Turkey who was originally from Bulgaria, Naim Suleimanov, I think was his name, and he was just about 4 feet 10 inches tall, and yet he had the ability to lift weights that were about 2.5 times his body weight, and he went on to clinch 3 Olympic gold medals, 1988, 92 and 96. 1996 at Atlanta, that was his last Olympic gold medal in weightlifting. The Pocket Hercules, the Pocket Dynamo as he was, just at 4 feet 10, Naim Suleimanov of Turkey. I remember it for him. I also remember 1996 for Michael Johnson for his double that he completed, the gold in the 200 and the 400 meters track event. Those are 3 or 4 key memories I'll have of the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. Jump to 2000, it was my first Olympics coverage for a TV network where I anchored the studio broadcast for them. And that's the reason why I think it was special for me. And I remember that for multiple reasons. One, I remember the opening ceremony broadcast, and I remember the final lap of that being run by none other than Kathy Freeman, who was an Aborigine runner from Australia. And she went on to win the gold as well in the 400 meters in the track and field events. So that to me was one of the moments I remember very, very distinctly of the 2000 Sydney Olympics. The other moment I remember is the men's 50-meter freestyle, because there was a swimmer from the United States of America called Anthony Irwin, who was just about 20 odd years old, went on to win his first Olympic gold medal when he won that 50 meters freestyle. And the reason why I've mentioned this name is because I want all of you to remember that name, Anthony Irwin. Remember that name, because by the time I'll carry on with this broadcast, I'll come back and refer to that name again, and I'll tell you the story as to why I remember that name so distinctly. For Sydney 2000, I'll also remember that Olympic Games as far as international milestones are concerned. That was the last Olympic Games that I remember where Russia finished in the second spot as far as the overall medals tally was concerned, just behind the United States of America, because from then on, from 2004 onwards, it was not Russia featuring at number 2 at all in the medals tally. That slot went to another country. So that's the reason why I remember the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games from an international perspective. I can now move forward to 2004, the Athens Olympics. Special for multiple reasons. First, it is special because the Olympics returned to the spot, to the place, to the city where the entire journey of the modern Olympics had begun. 1896 was when the first modern Olympics were held in Athens. And after a long gap, in 2004, after exactly 108 years, the Games returned to the city which had hosted the first modern Olympics. So that made the 2004 Athens Olympics very special from an international perspective. The other reason why I remember the Athens Olympics in 2004 was also, from an international perspective, there was a certain Michael Phelps from the United States of America who decided to make a huge splash in the pool. Albeit, there was a lot of talk about what could happen and what will happen, but Phelps in the 2004 Olympics went on and won a total of 8 Olympic medals. That included 6 gold medals and a couple of bronze medals as well in that edition. So 8 Olympic medals, and you knew that there was more coming from this very special swimmer called Michael Phelps. 2008, multiple reasons to remember those Olympics. I'll go back and quickly wrap up one more thing about 2004, and that was, as I said, Russia had dropped out of the top 2, and that was the first time in 2004 that China had made their presence felt, and they moved up to the second spot. And you knew that they'd be looking to challenge the United States of America, because the next edition, the 2008 edition of the Olympics, had to happen in Beijing, in China. So they were really ramping up their presence as far as international sporting achievements were concerned. And that's exactly what happened in 2008. They barely missed out on that top spot at China. They were almost, just about 10 medals behind the overall medals tally of the United States of America. And that just showed you the number of medals that they'd won, and also the kind of ground that they'd made up in international sport had the Chinese when they hosted the Games in Beijing in 2008. 2008 was also special because it marked the presence and the arrival of the king of the track and field arena, and that was none other than Usain Bolt. The Jamaican was setting the track on fire. He had the Olympic record in 2008 in Beijing, went on to win the 100 and the 200 meter gold in that particular edition. There was also another interesting Jamaican all sweep that happened in the women's 100 meters, where it was a 1-2-3 from Jamaica, which was very, very special indeed. And not often do you find that there's no bronze medal given out, but 2008 in the women's 100 meters, there were 2 runners who tied for second spot, and therefore you had 2 silver medals that went out, and it's just a gold and 2 silvers, no bronze in that women's 100 meters. So another interesting story that I'd remember from 2008. Move on to 2012, the London Olympics. London once again hosting the Olympic Games. They'd remember London had hosted the 1948 edition of the Games as well. So 2012, you look at that London Olympics, and again, you look at in the pool, it was domination by 2 American swimmers, and especially again, it was Michael Phelps, who again won 4 gold medals in that edition of the Games. Overall, by the time he finished in 2016, Phelps had a record 28 Olympic medals. That included 23 gold medals. So, the stories there abound. Usain Bolt, 2012, again stamped his authority on the Games with again another double in the 100 and the 200 in the men's track event, the blue ribbon, as they call the sprint in the 100 and the 200. Also the relay gold for Team Jamaica as well. And you knew that he was the undisputed king as far as the track and field arena was concerned. And then came Rio in 2016, the previous edition of the Olympics, where Brazil, as a country, hosted. Rio was the host city, and that was the time that Brazil won the maximum number of gold medals. They won 7 gold medals as the host country in 2016 in Rio. That was an achievement for them. It also marked the fairy tale send-off that we were looking at as far as Usain Bolt was concerned. Had a strong overall finish. The star as he was, the king as he was, Leo, went out in style. Did Usain Bolt? He won the 100, won the 200, and the relay as well went to the Jamaican team. You also had, the other key moment was Mo Farah, the British distance runner who'd won gold in the 5,000 and the 10,000 in London in home conditions in front of his home crowd. And he went on to win the 5,000 and the 10,000 again in 2016 and completed the double for 2 Olympics on the trot, thereby setting a record and stamping his authority over the middle distance running distances, so to speak. And the other name, remember, a little while ago I talked about, which I wanted you to remember, and that name was Anthony Irwin. Now remember Anthony Irwin because in 2000 he'd won an Olympic gold. In 2003 he gave up swimming. He in fact auctioned his Olympic medal a year later in order to raise money for tsunami relief victims, to gather money for relief for tsunami victims. Got back to competitive swimming in 2011, and then at the Rio Olympics, at the age of 35, he went on to become the oldest Olympic gold medalist when he went on to win the 50-meter freestyle again after a gap of 16 years. He'd won it as a 20-year-old and then won it as a 35-year-old. And that to me was the story of perseverance, the story of determination, and a story that can be talked about in terms of how to motivate yourself, find your way back, and reclaim top honors. And the other endearing image that I'll always remember from that Olympics was Joseph Schooling, a young lad from Singapore who, as a young strapling teenager, had a photograph clicked with his icon Michael Phelps. Come the Olympics in 2016, that young Joseph Schooling got Singapore their first Olympic gold medal in the pool when Schooling went on to beat his childhood idol and hero Michael Phelps to clinch a gold. So those are stories I remember. Those are stories that I can recount from my coverage of the Olympic Games for multiple broadcasters. I'll have more such stories that I'll keep sharing with you in the videos that I make.